Hi, welcome to this virtual event of CRESS, the Productivity During Pandemic series. I'm Dr. Michelle D. I'm an associate professor of political science and the academic director of CRESS at McMaster University. CRESS is a Center for Research in Empirical Social Sciences. I want to begin by acknowledging that McMaster is on the unceded territories of the Mississauga and Haudenosaunee nations and within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, we are very fortunate to have with us Dr. Hyunjin Seo, who leads a technology education information literacy workshops with marginalized groups, including formerly incarcerated women seeking to enter the workforce. And we are very excited to learn from her today about her work with women after incarceration.
Good morning. As introduced, I'm Hyunjin Seo. I'm associate professor at the University of Kansas. Today, I will talk about technology education that we offer to women who have been recently released from jails or prison. But I do want to begin with some context. So, in my research and teaching, I cover digital media, social media, emerging technologies, and digital inclusion. Particularly the project I will be discussing today, digital inclusion project, really utilizes community-based research approaches. So, why digital inclusion? In US, of course, in other countries as well, the number of internet users has increased significantly over the years. And in US, about 90% of adults use the internet. But then there are 10% who are non-internet users, right? So who are they? So if you look at the age distributions in terms of internet users, not surprisingly, younger folks are more likely to use the internet. Right? And again, but all age groups, they have adopted the internet increasingly over the years. What about income? Lower people in lower income categories, they tend to not use the internet compared with higher income groups. So there's an age factor and income. Another factor that plays here is education. As you can see in this chart, that people who have less than high school education, they are less likely to use the internet, right? So what in my project, I look at the intersectionality, not just one factor. So consider income, education, age, and also race, ethnicity. Because we know that certain racial groups tend to be sort of lacking some digital resources as well. Most people that we work with are women of the people of color, and again, lower socioeconomic groups as well. So there are three primary groups that our center, the Center for Digital Inclusion that I am directing, has worked with. The first group is low-income older adults in the Midwest. We did a 2-year programming with them by partnering with a senior center in one of the really poorest neighborhoods in the metropolitan area. And we regularly give workshops for older adults who want to learn digital technologies. This was our presentation at Grand Families Conference. So this conference is aimed at supporting grandparents who are primary caretakers of their grandchildren. And also we did 6-month programming for refugees and other immigrants who have recently arrived in the US. For this particular program, we had an interpreter for our program, particularly a person who speaks Swahili, because some of the participants were not familiar with English at that point. And the project that, I got to start with this technology education for women released from jails or prison in 2016. And a friend of mine who worked for a nonprofit organization supporting women's reentry actually asked me whether I would be able to provide some programming for the clients that they served. She knew that I was involved in digital literacy and information literacy efforts for marginalized populations. So I said yes, and it sort of started as a volunteer project. And I was able to secure some small grant to hire a graduate student. So we did 1 year programming for a group of women who were recently released from jails and who wanted to gain employment. So we covered Microsoft Office programs and computer use and information assessment, online information assessment, and so on. And this program was very successful in that the participants gained knowledge and experiences that they desired. And also all of them, after the programming, secured employment. I'm not saying that was because of our program, but based on our conversations with the women, it was clear that the program was very helpful for them to land jobs. So I was thinking, how can I scale up the program? Because I realized that there are not many programs focusing specifically on technology education, specifically for women recently released from jails or prison. So that's why I thought to get bigger grants to be able to interact with a greater number of participants. So our team received 1.4 million grant from the U.S. National Science Foundation, and this project includes 14 members from 5 different disciplines and so on. Before discussing the specifics of the project, I also want to kind of share some context related to why women in reentry. Why should we care, right? Why should we care about their technology education? In US, there have been the increasing rates of women's imprisonment, particularly in state prisons. And over the past 40 years, we have seen about 800% increase in terms of women's incarceration. And this is in the context of the overall number of people in incarceration declining in the US. And on any given day, 1 million women are under criminal justice supervision, and 60% of them have a child under the age of 18. That really is an important factor to consider because for them to be able to support their children's education, they should be pretty familiar and comfortable with digital technologies. And only 1/3 of women released they have stable employment. So job seeking, applying for jobs, those are really important aspects that they want to learn and do better after they're released. And this graph is from Prison Policy Initiative. It shows that how the growth rates of women in incarceration and men in incarceration have increased over the years, but you see that the rates of women imprisonment was significantly higher, right? Another issue here is that because men are the dominant, still the majority population in jails and prisons, a lot of reentry programs are geared toward male population in mind. But when you think of women, the majority of women in incarceration, they had, experience of sexual abuse or violence as a child or as an adult woman. So there had a lot of mental health or other aspects that need to be taken into account in providing reentry education for women. But again, the reentry programs really tailored for formerly incarcerated women, and not, there are not enough programs in that area, particularly, as I mentioned, Berkman mentioned that not many programs really provide tailored technology education for the women. Another complication here is that when they're in jails or prisons, they are largely isolated from the internet or computers because in those facilities, they do not allow the use of internet as a security measure. But as they are released to this increasingly digital society, they really have difficulty in really getting adjusted to different digital aspects of their daily lives. This map shows, in which states we see really a significantly higher rates of women's imprisonment. And you see that the states in crimson or orange, those are the states where we see a high rates of women's imprisonment. And those are largely located in the Midwest or some Pacific North as well. So what the two states that I'm focusing on for the NSF project is Kansas and Missouri. Again, those are compared with the other states have higher rates of women's imprisonment. So what are the key components? As I mentioned, this is a multidisciplinary, multi-institution project. We have team members from 2 different universities. I'm the principal investigator on this project. We have 6 graduate students and 5 professors, and from computer science, women's study, communication, education, and public health. And we realized to be able to provide a holistic technology education for the women, it is important to really have people who have expertise in different areas. So there are 3 really important aspects to our project: research, education, and community engagement. Research-wise, we conduct interviews with our participants to better understand their technology use and experiences, as well as what they want to learn in computer classes and so on. And also we conduct survey regularly, particularly before they join the program and after they complete different phases of the program, to compare how their knowledge and confidence level have changed over time. And we also have control group and intervention group. Intervention group are obviously those who participate in our program. Control group are women, formerly incarcerated women who are not participating in our program. Education-wise, we have 4 different phases covering an introductory, intermediate, advanced levels. For introductory courses, we cover Microsoft Office programs and online information assessment, online information security. When you go upper level, we cover coding as well. And one of the aspects that we look at is how different education modalities influence their learning. So we have hybrid group, that is, they meet online as well as in person. Online only group, entire education is offered online. In building content, we emphasize interest-based content. That is, interest-based learning drives development of our curriculum. That is why research is so important, because when we do interviews and survey, we try to gauge their interests and desires in learning technology. In doing research and education, community engagement is so important. We can't do this program without our community partners. To discuss more specifically about each of the components, research-wise, we look at 3 aspects. The first one is how different modalities of offering technology education influence learning outcomes. As I mentioned earlier, we have hybrid group and online only group. And also we want to see how their increased knowledge and skills in technology associated with their levels of self-efficacy, social adjustment, and perceived social support. These social psychological aspects are shown to be associated with people's willingness and comfort level in using technologies. And also we look at the relationship between technology education participation and employment and recidivism. Apparently, to look at the effects of this program on their employment and recidivism, we have to follow our participants long term. So this is a 3-year project, and even after the 3-year grant project, we plan to follow up with them for 2 years. So we'll be looking at a 5-year sort of research study to examine the effects of this program on their employment and recidivism, as well as their knowledge and skills in technology. And as I mentioned, we have an intervention group and control group for cross-sectional analysis as well. Technology education, there are 4 phases. The first phase, online security, information search, Microsoft Office programs. And I should note that these are topics that are determined based on our research, based on our interactions with them. We center their interest in developing our curriculum. And also, the NSF really, what they were looking for in funding our project is to broaden participation in STEM education. Our focus is STEM technology education. And we really cover computational thinking and coding aspects as well. You'll be surprised in how many of the participants actually are interested and excited learning about coding. And that really can help them gain entry positions in technology sector, as well as some office positions. And we have peer mentors, because research on adult learning shows that the peer mentors can be an effective motivator for participants. Before COVID-19, we offered sessions in public libraries. This is a photo from our in-person sessions. So many of our participants do not have access to computers. They don't have laptops or desktop computers. So we partnered with public libraries so that our participants can use their laptops during our sessions. So every week we use their conference room for our session. But since COVID-19, obviously, we couldn't hold our in-person sessions, so all programming is currently online. And what we have found, that most participants actually end up using their cell phones to participate in our program and complete assignments, which really is not an ideal situation. So we try to provide some internet access support, as well as some device support as well. This is a learning management system site that we developed. So we have web and mobile sites just for this program, because our participants, due to their criminal justice history, they really are concerned about online security and privacy. So we provide a tailored learning management site so that they feel comfortable coming here. And even so, we encourage them to use pseudonym rather than their real name. So they can also, instead of using their actual photo, they can use emoji to sort of for their profile photo. So we have provided a set of measures to enhance privacy and security for our participants. Our community partners include public libraries, both in Kansas and Missouri, also Women's Employment Network. They provide really helpful information, up-to-date insights related to what the companies are looking for in hiring people. And also legal aid organizations. There are a lot of legal issues that we have to think about, even in reaching out to our participants, even in promoting our program. There are a lot of legal issues that we have to think about. So it has been really important to work closely with legal aid organizations. And we have some lawyers on our advisory board as well. And Department of Corrections, they have promoted our program among women who are leaving local jails or prisons. And also we work with several nonprofit organizations that provide support for women's reentry. Sometimes they refer their clients to our program. So what we have done so far, we just finished the first year, and we have conducted interviews and surveys with about 150 women recently released from jails or prisons. By recently, I mean past 5 years. And we also have conducted participant observation to see how they engage, how they interact with technologies and other participants in the classroom setting. Our instructors write journals to provide more data for our analysis in the future. And we have given presentations, manuscripts are currently under review. In terms of education, we have engaged 100 women in the program. Our goal is to work with a total of 300 women by 2022, which is the end of the 3-year grant project. In terms of community engagement, we really pay a lot of attention and make efforts to have one-on-one sessions, more really sort of in-depth conversations with our community partners. We have met with about 45 community representatives from 15 different organizations, and we have established MOUs with 5 organizations. But of course, it's not easy. Not only the time and effort needed to conduct research, recruit participants, offer education programs, there are other aspects as well, right? Because we are working with marginalized populations, we have to go through the full IRB review, and everything we do obviously goes through IRB review process. And because of the involvement of marginalized populations, the IRB review processes tend to longer than other projects. And sometimes because, again, we have not only our team members, but other community partners, they can create some challenges in completing some portions of the project in a timely manner. And building and maintaining partnerships with community organizations and participants can be challenging. What we have found is sometimes we want to work with a certain community organization, but they don't have resources that is needed. For example, human or financial resources. We are not getting any financial support from these organizations, but if they are so small and they don't have enough people to even just spend time to participating in meetings and so on, it's difficult, because we want our community partners to be as much involved in the decision processes. Sometimes we wanted to offer our programming at a community center, but we found that they don't have enough number of computers, for example. So when you work with community partners, the lack of resources on the part of community partners can pose obstacles in building relationships as well. With COVID-19, every institution is having difficulties in conducting their programs, and retaining our participants has been challenging, although we were lucky to maintain a good number of participants in our program. This challenge particularly stems from the fact that most of our participants do not have computers or laptops. So some feels that, trying to do assignments, watching videos and everything on their cell phone, it's challenging. And we, based through our interviews, we have found that many of them actually have limited data plan. So they don't necessarily want to spend their data, plans for this particular program, right? So there are a lot of factors and a lot of challenges that our participants are going through, especially amid COVID-19. So as I indicated earlier, our team were able to provide some internet access support through mobile hotspots or other ways, but it remains a challenge. And also, we're trying to find ways of scaling up the program. that's something that our team will continue to explore and experiment. And we hope that we are able to provide some useful insights in terms of how to make program like this more scalable. This is all I have, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. We can open the floor now for questions if there are any questions.
Can I go with one?
Yeah.
So I was curious, given one of the major obstacles appears to be equipment and the lack of for these ladies, do you have any programs where laptop donations for them, or even, I mean, not even new, but is there anything where they could pick up a laptop from a donated source from the communities, like get the communities involved, or communities sort of turning their back on these ladies, for that not to be possible?
Yes, so in US, increasingly there are programs, organizations that provide refurbished computers at very lower price. So I have worked with some organizations, and I know, like about $150 you can get laptop. And we have kind of thought about different ways. And we have some other funders who are willing to provide, and we secured the funding. But COVID-19 is posing challenge because we have to kind of meet them to give laptops. And also we have about 100 women that we interacted with. In terms of the number of women who are currently taking courses, we have about 25 and 30. So we want to be able, can you provide digital devices to all women, right? So that's we are kind of trying to decide. Mobile hotspots, sort of the easier way to support them, and that's what we do. And also we provide some internet access stipend. But device, I know that's something we want to tackle. And again, we were able to secure funding from some technology companies, but we are trying to find a way to best utilize the resource for our participants. And one of the things that we have been considering is, as you mentioned, is refurbished computers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like COVID has been just an absolute blow for programs like yours, where the maximum
Absolutely.
impact would be in person, and those
Yes.
classes are just not being attended anymore. So if I feel like, if anything, it's these kinds of communities that are going to get the most impact by something like this.
Yeah, before COVID-19, we utilized, library computers, right? So, it was easier for them to come to library and use the computers as much as they want. But now that is not available because libraries are still closed or have limited access. So as program provider, we now have to think about the devices as well. So yes, that's definitely something that we are working on.
I was curious about how or whether the security concerns that the women had were similar to or different from those of the other groups that you've worked with. Because I'm thinking about kind of the older people in my life and their kinds of worries about phishing, or sometimes not even worried about phishing when they should be, and fraud online. So since you've worked with kind of so many people newly arrived in the US who maybe are coming from places where there was a lot of persecution, and that would create concerns, or older residents. So are there significant differences in the types of worries about security online, or are they kind of shared across all these different groups?
Yeah, so we actually just finished a manuscript on online security and privacy concerns among women recently released from jails or prisons. All three groups that we worked with, they have the overall concern about being online. So we know that based on prior studies that their concerns of privacy often prevent them from adopting technology. So older adults in particular, they say, while I hear so much about my friends, facing online scams and phishing attempts and so on, maybe I would not just use the internet, period.
Mm-hmm.
So, but what are some different concerns that women have? Some of the most frequently mentioned aspect was nothing to lose aspect. So actually, this was interesting in that the privacy, prior studies on privacy mentioned that a lot of people who argue against privacy advocates, right, they adopt this notion of, I have nothing to lose, I have nothing to hide, so only people who have something to hide will seek privacy. So that was interesting that it was coming from our participants. But one important aspect that I need to emphasize here is, for them, it is more about, I don't own much, there's nothing really to lose, right? It's the sense that, yeah, they can hack my email, they don't find nothing. They can even financial information. Some people say, well, I have a lot of debt, so good luck trying to hacking. That's some of the one of the participants mentioned. So that's one of the issues. Another thing is concerns about their ex-partners, ex-husband, ex-boyfriend. Some of them say they try to be very careful being online because they worried about unhealthy relationships, right? So they don't want to get dragged into this undesirable situations. So they say, for example, my ex-husband is trying to find me and I don't want to be online. So oftentimes their concerns about ex-partners or unhealthy relationships came up. So they tried to build different privacy boundaries because they know that just one simple Facebook friend acceptance can lead to, again, really, vicious cycle. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
I'm curious about kind of the broader academic context here, depending on the structures around tenure and requirements for professors at different universities. Some universities do more to incentivize and reward community engaged research and these more sort of direct service work, and others really don't. And so I was curious how that fits in with your research trajectory and what you're trying to accomplish in your career.
Yeah, that's actually because I do community-based research, I'm often invited to give lectures on how to work with community partners for research programs, and especially pre-tenured faculty members, they ask a lot about that. It is true that it takes longer time to publish, right? Because you have so many partners that you work with. But I think if you are organized and in sort of thinking about what papers can come out from this project, I think you can actually get quality publications. What I have found, before my tenure, I think I started this program during the year that I was going for tenure. So my pre-tenure publications are sort of not as time intensive as these products. But I know that increasingly in US, at least, the universities really value the engaged scholarship. So that's one. And second, as I mentioned, because in my case, I work with marginalized populations, and they're compared with studies looking at college students, and so not that there is any problem with that, there is significantly smaller number of publications looking at, in my case, social media use or digital technology use among these populations. So what I have found when we submit manuscripts to journals, they really value that this fills an important gap in the literature. So again, I think, the time and effort is all worth it, because as a scholar, who studied digital divide and digital inclusion, I not only want to contribute to the scholarly community, I want to be able to say this research actually was translated into real world situations. And this was actionable research that could be adopted by community partners. So that helps me be excited and more active in research. So I know it's not for everyone, but for me, and I see particularly a lot of PhD students, I think they want to see closer connections between research and the real world and policy communities as well. So I increasingly see more students wanting to engage community partners for their research projects.
I have a similar type question as well about the nature of your work, the part of it that's interdisciplinary, and what that means for the research itself or for the process. And I guess maybe a specific question would be kind of, to your mind, what are the real values or benefits that you get out of being part of such a diverse interdisciplinary team? And then maybe if there are some drawbacks, particularly thinking about kind of junior scholars or new scholars that are interested in doing this type of work, what are the kinds of rewards or benefits, but then also some of the things to consider before you build your own kind of interdisciplinary team like this?
Yeah, I mean, I want to say, as a new assistant professor, you hear, not now, when I was a new assistant professor, you hear universities emphasizing interdisciplinary research. But in practice, it becomes very complicated, right? I actually, immediately I became an assistant professor. I worked with computer scientists because, again, my area is technology. And I realized that we speak different languages. It took time for us to really say, yes, it makes sense for both of us. So it does take time, but it really helped me to be creative and innovative in asking questions, in asking research questions, and methodologically as well. In social sciences, increasingly we see the computational social science applications, and that's huge. And even for communication department, some of them hire actually computer scientists as professors in the communication department. So you see increasing sort of exchanges between different disciplines. The value, again, is me being able to ask questions to broaden the horizon of my scholarship, and also being able to use newer or innovative theoretical or methodological approaches. Now, challenges are many. There are many challenges. As I mentioned, right? We come from different disciplinary perspectives, and different journals, right, have different expectations in terms of even how to organize the paper. So you have to really kind of decide and very clear in your collaboration, right? So for this particular portion of the project, who is leading the project, which journal we're looking at, make those decisions early on so that you are more sort of efficient in publishing. And some other challenges that I have encountered also actually is, the collaboration sites that you use in social science. Again, people use Word or, the other Mac programs, and computer science tend to use LaTeX and other. So you may think that this is kind of a simple problem, but because we are so familiar with different types of software programs, even, bibliography things, right? So those are even, macro level and micro level things that we have to take into account in working with people in other disciplines. But overall, I would say that it has really helped me get external grants in particular. In social science, if you're just social scientist, not speaking with other disciplines, I would say in US, at least, it's hard to get federal funding, right? So this project really helped me think about the intersectionality of different disciplines, and thus I don't think I would have gotten the grant without the participation of computer scientists and other scholars in other disciplines. But again, because I think that especially junior scholars, they have this ideal notion of, oh yeah, I want to do interdisciplinary research, but you have to be very strategic, be clear about at what stage of the project, who is leading and who is writing which section, which journal you're targeting, which grant organization you're targeting. And otherwise, it can get really kind of disorganized and you don't get to publish as much as you could.
I'm curious about, and actually this has practical implications for me because we're looking at starting to develop a lot of curricula for community organizations, and then also some of the people that they work with that are pretty vulnerable in the community. And question that I've been really thinking about a lot is what changes in terms of pedagogy, in terms of expectations of students when working with people in the community, and how to address for things like the fact that people may not be able to show up nearly as consistently, and sort of progressing knowledge and learning when you may not have as much attention, you may not have as much attendance. Yeah, any thoughts on sort of what you've learned about how to adjust understandings and expectations and your own teaching methods?
Yeah, so I think, unless you actually do this, it's hard for you to understand so many different components that need to be addressed in doing community-based research. And as I mentioned, I see as really more and more students wanting to do something like this. I was a fellow at Harvard University in 2018 and 2019, and there were scholars from many different disciplines. I was really excited to see how many of them want to engage community partners. So whether you call it, co-design or community-based research, it's a big thing and it's getting bigger. So I'm really excited to see our PhD students, more of them wanting to do this. But when I talk with them, obviously they don't necessarily understand the challenges involved in this, but I always encourage them, right, to try to support them. So in terms of helping them understand how to conduct this type of research, especially when you work with marginalized populations, I say that empathy is very important, because if you're not able to empathize with them in the situations that they go through, because a lot of us, right, we are highly educated, we make a lot of assumptions, right, about, for example, how people use internet and so on. But you have to kind of really avoid making assumptions and talk with them. And that's why we say that interest-based research is very important. And the connection between research and community educate, the program is very important. The reason I think I get a lot of emails, both from scholars and community organizations wanting to see some, the kind of design and so on. The reason I think we get the request is we are merging the two together, right? Community organizations, they have access to marginalized populations. They work with them directly, but they don't necessarily have skills or resources to conduct research. And scholars, they have a lot of experience in research, but they often lack access to the populations that they want to support, right? So you have to understand that community partners and participants have a lot of challenges. And while for you, your research project is your priority, that is not the priority on the community partners. But sometimes we saw that even the leadership change, right? You met with the director, you signed an MOU, and you have new director, you have to start over again, right? Sometimes. So you have to anticipate sort of the situations that you cannot control, and you have to be flexible and adaptable, and that I really emphasize them. And another thing is respect in that sense, also respect for community partners. We hear over and over again, the marginalized populations that we work with, they really value the relationship because they think that we respect them. Some participants say that libraries are great. Some participants say that they went to library to learn about computer, but they felt that they were disregarded or ignored, sort of the sense that, oh, you don't know this kind of attitude, right? So that's why a lot of participants say that respect that our team showed told that our participants was very important. And also really close communication with community partners. It had to be you really take initiative and keep track of the community meetings. I have big Excel file where I take notes of the meeting times and discussed and so on, because the community partners often, again, they have lots of things that they need to take care of. You are only one part of their big program, right? So you have to be organized and proactive in meetings and so on. So I intentionally travel to, drive 30 minutes or an hour to meet with community representative instead of having phone call or Zoom call, because I think that's important. That shows your sincerity and your investment in the project. So early on, when I tried to build a relationship, I spent a lot of time on that, like actually going there. But once the trust is established, it is easier. Now I just call them, email, and they're really good about sort of following up with us. So those things are important. Again, I think because we are scholarly community, ultimately, we want to be able to disseminate our research findings, right, through publications and presentations and so on. So you have to be creative in terms of what can be research components, right? I was recently asked to write a book chapter about the process, right? So even your experience of building relationships can be a book chapter. So you have to kind of think, and once you invest your time and efforts early on, I think that, there can be a lot of delayed gratification later. So you may not think, it's not like content analysis, you analyze and, have paper boom within 6 months, but you may get multiple papers and sort of more longitudinal sort of analysis of relationship. Again, not only the actual research you conducted, research processes, a lot of people are interested in your writing about that as well.
That is fabulous. I think this talk is going to be a great resource for all of the graduate students at McMaster that are interested in doing this type of work and have thought that it was interesting but didn't know how it worked in practice and haven't ever heard someone talk about kind of the real benefits and challenges. We're nearing the end of the hour, so is there any last question that someone has?
Can I take it away from the academic for 1 second?
Yeah.
Sorry. I was very surprised, not in a great way, by the trajectory of you were talking about the 800% rise in women being incarcerated. And I know that's not your area of research, but I was wondering if you had any insight as to why that massive gap is happening between women and men being, honestly, I would have actually thought it would be the other way around. And I'm curious if they've ever had any insight as to why that's happening and why that increase in women being incarcerated now, especially with that many moms, 60% of them, you said, of mothers of children under 18. And myself, as a mom of a 12-year-old, I know that there's nothing that I would do to separate myself from my child. So I'm curious as to if there's ever been any insight into why that's happening now.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say, obviously I'm not an expert there,
Right.
but because of my project, I read a lot, and I have to obviously know about what is going on, right? A lot of women under, you know, criminal justice supervision, I said 1 million women on a given day. Many of them are there because of non-violent drug offenses. So drug possession, and or the spouse was possessed drug, they did fail to report or something like that. Why then sudden increase there? But it has been increased by about 800% over 40 years, right? Policy changes, right? So we had in US so-called war on drug. So, you know, so that really created a significant increase in terms of people being incarcerated for drug offenses, even for minor drug offenses. Why then women? So there are a lot of you know, aspects related to that. Again, when you think of this I don't want to say men, women, you know, they particularly, there is, you know, important distinction here, because, you know, after the non-violent drug offenses really sort of drove the main force of increasing the number of people incarcerated, a lot of women fell in that category. As opposed to, perhaps, again, I don't have specific statistics with me at this point, compared with more violent crimes that are tend to be committed by men. So it has a lot to do with, you know, policies on how to deal with drug-related offenses in US.
Right.
That's something, again, we have mass incarceration as a big issue. A lot of people are working on addressing the issue, and that is exactly one of the main points that we try to address.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and we're really grateful to have learned from you, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and good luck with the rest of your project, particularly in this challenging context of COVID-19.
Thank you. Very nice meeting you today.
Thank you.
Bye.